Hey everybody, it's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast. I'm your host Craig Lindell, and today we are talking about sports thanks to Baker Mayfield. He decided to do a video conference media availability during the COVID-19 lockdown, and happy to say that Baker Mayfield is back to winning the press conference. Yay! Yay! Look, we know press conferences here in Cleveland. We're well aware, whether it's Mike Pettin saying he's going to bloody somebody's nose, whether it's Joe Banner, Freddie Kitchens, if you wear Unja Brown, you don't matter. We know all about winning press conferences. We also know all about people losing press conferences. And it's kind of a weird thing because winning a press conference doesn't mean anything, but losing a press conference does. And Baker Mayfield used to win every single press conference he ever was in. His rookie year, he hit all the right notes all the time. He took his backup role out of the gate, really well, and talked about earning his position and earning his shot. And then he wins. He comes into the Jets game and helps the Browns win that game. And he hit basically every note, hit the right note every single week of his rookie year. Last year, everything went to hell. The season was hyped way too much. Freddie Kitchens was hired. John Dorsey decimated parts of the offensive line. Baker Mayfield got sacked what felt like 1,000,000 times, turned out to be 40 times. And increasingly, week after week after week, it became a joke, but he looked horrible. His body language sucked. He was getting baited, to the point where Jesus Tony, that press conference, I'm not sure if that was rock bottom, but it's darn close, right? And so he spent the whole season basically on a downward spiral, on a decline, losing press conferences. And so he's kept his mouth shut. If you wanted glimpses of him, you had to follow his wife on Instagram. He mostly stayed away from the media. He apparently, according to sources around him, he turned down media requests. And he finally talked to the media yesterday, and he said, it's just time to work, do our thing, instead of talking about it. And with that sentence, Baker took the press conference back. And again, that doesn't mean the Browns are going to win. But, winning the press conference is like a tie. It's like a holding court. It doesn't mean that you can win football games, but I might argue that losing press conferences kind of means that you have no chance of winning. Like, what was your confidence level in Baker Mayfield when his body language and the way he carried himself during that rough season last year had fallen to the point that it had fallen to? Did you have any faith or confidence at all? Because I certainly didn't. And so is this news? Kinda, not really. But at least he's back to saying the right things. We've seen the top of the mountain in terms of his press availability. We've seen the bottom of the mountain. I will take holding serve. I will take that. So yeah, Baker Mayfield. He's been working out with his teammates. He's saying all the right things about Kevin Stefanski's offense. And he says he's not putting pressure on himself, which I don't necessarily believe. I think he is putting pressure on himself, but I'm happier if he says he's not, because, that means he's carrying himself the right way. That means he's preparing and he's doing the things that he needs to do to be successful, or as successful as he can be. This is a huge year for the guy, financially, for his career. In every way that you can talk about it, this is a huge year for Baker Mayfield. And if he's not putting pressure on himself, he's crazy. He's crazy because he just has to be. I mean, the born underdog, the guy who amps himself up by paying attention to the haters. You're telling me he's not putting pressure on himself? Nah, I don't buy it. It's a good line though. It's a good line, and that's the point. He's saying the right things. So that's good. So it increasingly seems like we're going to get some NBA basketball maybe even before we get any MLB baseball. The baseball fight is unbelievable to me. I certainly understand the idea of haggling over money, especially when you're going to play fewer games and you're going to play fewer games on a different economic landscape because fans won't be buying tickets. But it seems like the owners are trying to negotiate their labor deal on the fly. It seems like they're trying to make a real change to the labor deal in a time when like nothing is normal. They're trying to negotiate a deal that's going to act in normal times during a period where there is no such thing as normal times. And I understand why the players are pushing back. It's really hard for these unions to act in the best interest of players that some of whom haven't even been born yet. Some of whom definitely haven't been drafted yet. And it's that kind of a thing where the owners and their longevity in their position as owners of teams, they have a distinct advantage in the negotiations. Some of them might have been around before the players who they're currently negotiating with were even born. They might have been in their families, on and on and on. So they can take a more of a long-term hardline approach because there's more institutional memory for them. They actually felt the last labor negotiation. None of the players who are representing the players union today, or almost none of them, or likely none of them, were playing. We're in the union in '94. It's just so it's a difficult transition for a players union to continue to negotiate with owners because the time horizon of the two stakeholders. This two stakeholder groups, it's just totally different. And my biggest pain and the thing I hate the most is the fact that we are expected to take a side and we're expected to have an opinion about who's right, who's wrong. Ultimately, I think fans just kind of have to throw their hands in the air and say, hey, look, you guys need to play and you need to figure it out. And you need to do so under a system that you both can agree to and sign on to. As you probably know from my talk about the Dolan family and their ownership over the years, where I tell you they're truly wonderful people and wonderful citizens of our region and the state of Ohio, and they're great, wonderful people. But I just can't bring myself to pretend to care about their money the way that they do, and that kind of goes for all owners. I may not get emotional and defend players, but I'm certainly not going to get emotional and defend owners either. Even if they were 100% right, it's like we know that they're not the sympathetic figures. We just know. They're the ones who own the team. They're the ones who can sell it for 5 times what they paid for it or whatever it is. And even in this market, even if they put the team up for sale right now, you think there wouldn't be a line of at least 3 or 4 billionaires who want to buy that team? There would be. There just would be. I know it. And in your heart, you know it. But it's unbelievable that the NBA is probably going to resume. I mean, I guess their season had already been mostly played and was well underway. So the fact that they're going to get back before baseball, or they could get back before baseball, on the one hand, it shouldn't be surprising. But on the other hand, I am kind of surprised. Baseball is the kind of sport that was made for social distancing. It's the kind of sport that can be played far more safely, I think, than NBA basketball. NBA basketball players, bump up against each other, and it's an indoor sport, so they're sweating all over the place and then bumping into each other. And so if you want to talk about disease vectors and virality and spreading a disease, are you more likely to spread it playing basketball or playing baseball? An outside sport where, other than a close play on a double play or a close play at the plate or first base, players don't really even have to get close to each other. If you really want to go crazy, you can ban catchers talking to pitchers, I guess, because that's about as close as 2 players get to each other during the course of a game. And yet, with all those things going on and with the headwinds associated with playing sports for all these different leagues, the one sport that should be safest, maybe not including golf, one of the safer sports might not get going because they're going to be arguing over money. They're not because they can't figure out a safe way to do it. That certainly is a challenge, but because they're too busy arguing and trying to set long-term precedent in a business deal when they should be just focused on super, super short-term goals of getting back on the field and playing baseball. Because that's how players earn money. That's how owners earn money. And that's how they need to do it. That's how you get back at least some semblance of revenue. Going with no revenue. Isn't it kind of surprising that the owners are playing chicken with the players? What do you think that means for their ability to ride out a scenario with no revenue? Makes you wonder. It does seem like the Cavaliers might be done regardless, which I guess is fine. It would have been nice to see some more Cavs action, I guess. I've always told you I'm a Cavs fan before I'm an NBA fan. In this time and place, I will definitely watch some NBA, whether the Cavs are in it or not. I do miss sports enough for that. But it seems like whatever the NBA does, it'll preclude teams that are as far down in the standings as the Cavaliers are. And last but not least, I got to tell you, I'm not sure how much I actually miss sports. I mean, I definitely miss it. I definitely love watching sports. I've watched some UFC. That's been fun. But at the same time, these kinds of situations, and I know this is a whole new one, but these kinds of situations actually put sports in perspective in the bad way, where they'd be nice distractions, but what I'm finding is the roller coaster of emotions that I've been on and that so many of you, the rest of you, are on. It can't be solved by another more satisfactory distraction, even sports. As much as I love sports, what I'm seeking is normalcy, and just bringing back baseball or the NBA, that doesn't make things normal again. Sports are fun. I've spent way too much of my life obsessing on them, and I do love them, but they're not important. Certainly not important in the way that we watch professional sports. The real important sports and the most important sports in my world right now are youth sports and things that my kids can be involved with, because like this COVID-19, sheltering in place, it's like sanding down a stick, and when over winter, when my kids were playing basketball and soccer, and they played soccer in the fall, and then we played some indoor, and we were busy. We were doing things 3-4 days a week where they were doing martial arts, and the kids were staying active, and then they valued their downtime. And so we were like a sharp stick. And, in the first month, it felt good to have that sharp edge kind of sanded off, and the stick kind of sanded down. And I had even convinced myself that we had been too busy as a family, and I was never going to let us get that busy ever again. We were overextended and just running ourselves ragged, doing too much. I had convinced myself that was true, and I might have been right. But as we've sanded that stick down over the course of 3 months, and you imagine you're holding the stick in your left or right hand, depending on whether you're left-handed or right-handed, and you're sanding with your other hand. And now we've sanded that stick down so far that the sandpaper's about to start hitting my hand, about starting to hit my knuckle. I'm losing it a little bit. I've been on the roller coaster. I've had highs. I've had lows. I've had moments where I felt like I could do this forever, that I felt comfortable. I was proud of myself. I was proud of my company and my friends and all of us for doing the things that we're doing. But it's starting to burst at the seams. So everything's starting to feel a little bit worse. And I'm sure this is just a down cycle, and I'll come out of it. And Who knows? Maybe a couple baseball games or a couple NBA games might help, but I'm not so sure. The only way to find out, though, is for these teams to get back. For these leagues to get back, the players and the owners to figure it out and start playing, in a safe way, of course. I'm not asking anybody to do anything stupid, but I don't know. I'm curious about your perspective. Has this accentuated the importance of sports? Has it dumbed it down to the point where you don't think sports are nearly as important as you used to? I mean, I'm sure we all miss professional sports. We miss basketball and baseball. And if there's any interruption in the football season, we're certainly going to miss that too. I'm certainly going to miss that. I've always been a football first guy. But even if they do play it, it's just a distraction. And I'm kind of tired of seeking out distractions. I'm kind of tired of going from one distraction to the next. And what I don't need are new distractions. I need things to do. I need some semblance of my life back, and that's not on the entertainment side. Anyway, that's currently how I'm feeling. I'm sorry to be such a downer. I just hope that, by speaking the language that I'm feeling in my soul right now and kind of where I am, that it speaks to you guys too. I'm not sure if you're on an upswing or a downswing or whether you've just got it all figured out and you're, biscuits and gravy. But I'm not. I'm up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. So here's hoping that we get some good news on top of good news on top of good news. And thanks for listening to me ramble. Talk to you next time. It's been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.